So we're talking about testimony, right? We've been talking about why to share your testimony. I think I've covered that in the last 2 weeks. I could tell you again, but it'd kind of be belaboring it, wouldn't it? We share our testimony because we comfort others with the comfort that we've been given. We administer the hope that we've been given, that sort of thing. And we've shared the scriptures behind that with Isaiah 53, Revelation 12, and some others. 2 Corinthians chapter 1. We've shared all that, and we've talked about that, and we've gone through it. But the reason why we're talking about this is because not everybody wants to share their testimony, right? When we go out in a normal day, we pass by a lot of people, and we really don't share with a lot of them, and most of them don't share with us. It's something that's missing from society and from our church and from the church as a whole. Sometimes from our families, from all kinds of elements, we don't see testimony being shared. People speaking of what God's doing in their lives, we don't see that a whole lot. Why is that? So pride would be one reason. Reason for me a lot of times. What else? Fear. Yeah. Fear of rejection. That's a big, huge reason. If I tell you who I really am, and then you don't like me, then I've got nothing left. But if I hide from you who I really am, and I give you some fake person and you don't like them, then that doesn't bother me because that's not really me. But if I tell you all my inner stuff, all my true stuff, and I'm just real and open and honest with you, and you reject that, I got nothing left for you. That hurts. Sometimes we try to pretend it doesn't, but it hurts. No matter how much we know the person, we get rejected at Walmart by somebody, and it hurts. Why else? Any other reasons? So he plants that seed of rejection. Because I still see rejection in that if I tell you what football team I like and you reject that, you're rejecting them. I can kind of play it off a little bit. It's not me you reject. So Satan tries to tell us we're the only ones sometimes, doesn't he? We're the only ones that ever felt that way. We're the only one that ever had that problem. And your problem certainly can't help anybody else because you're the only ones that ever had that problem, right? Any other reasons y'all can think of? How about apathy? Sometimes we just don't care. It could help others, but we just don't care if it does or not. We pass by a lot of people that are needy, and we just don't care. I try to remember, hate's not the opposite of love. Apathy is the opposite of love. Just because you can love me or hate me, and I'm good with either of those, but if you just don't care, well, that's a little worse, isn't it? I hadn't thought through any of these. I'm just asking this question of myself as well. So what else is there? Is there something else that holds us back? There's pride, there's fear, there's apathy. I think most of it falls under that rejection and pride, and sometimes apathy. But I think that pride's a big one. That's a big one. For everything we do, it kind of wraps around a lot of it, doesn't it? So it's outside our expectations. We don't really expect it from ourselves. In fact, we expect us to hold it back. And now these two guys, this is Boone Phillips and Malana Phillips. And the Boone was just on the Emmaus walk this weekend, and so was Will. The thing I always love about the Emmaus walk is there's 15 talks, and very little of it is preaching. Is that fair?
Yeah, he wasn't preaching. I was a leader on this one. He done a lot.
It's people sharing how God's moved in their life on a particular topic, dealing with that particular issue, but talking about how God moved in their lives, right? That's what kind of makes it so powerful, because you're hearing their stuff. You're hearing how God's been powerful in their lives, then you can imagine Him being powerful in your life. How there can be a change. Ooh, that's a good one. I was thinking of that this morning. Has anybody decided on something they'd like to share? Anybody ready yet to share a testimony? Well,
You will be. I could share a small testimony.
Go for it. Go for it.
Back before, I guess it's in the between time, because I was in church for some time, and thought that I knew that I knew Christ, but kind of like the Krispy Kreme donut, I hadn't experienced Christ. So I was in church, and then I just kind of fell out. I let Satan steal my glory, and James really fell out of church, and we fell really hard. And glory to Him, I got so prideful, and wow, did I get prideful? Wow, look what I've done. I've got this great job, and I'm making all this good money, more money than I've ever made. Growing up poor, that was a big thing for me, to be making the kind of money I was making. I'm not talking six-figure money, but good money for a poor country boy. And I was really proud. I really was. And boy, when He broke that out of me, what a relief. I mean, what a relief. Glory to Him.
And how'd that happen? How'd He break that out of you?
A lot of prayer.
On your part or others?
Both.
Anybody else here that's not a guest that wants to share tonight? Anything y'all want to speak to? Well, think on that. I'll ask you again in a minute. Well, I asked these guys to come and to share a testimony as well. These are my neighbors. They mark the boundary. The rule has always been, you can ride your bike anywhere you want, but you don't go past Malana's house. And we have gotten a call before. Hey, I just seen your kids riding their bike past my house. Are they supposed to? And we go up and find them, and they're like,
One thing I like seeing now, your mom and dad's out there walking with you. And that was good for you doing that, because I about run over some of them one day. On four-wheeler.
Well, I didn't tell them what to share or how much. I told them the same thing I told you every week. Y'all have heard it? So here. Oh, it's going on YouTube. Broadcast everywhere. Put that there.
Yeah, almost time to go. You're better standing up.
Watch the ceiling fan.
Yeah, I see it. All right. I'm Daniel Phillips from Overton County. I've been saved for about 30 years. I was nine when I was saved. But, I grew up in a Church of God. Livingston Church of God on Airport Hill. And teenage years was great. You know how it is. You're a teenager. And I went to church camp and served God all the way. And then when I turned 19, I went out in the real world. And you know how the real world will do. It'll smack you in the face and get into a factory and working with people that do stuff. But he brought me back a few years later. I never really got away. It was just, you just do. And I was about, then we swapped churches and went to another church. And let's see, that was probably 2 or 3 years before me and my wife married. And then we met and we got married. We was there for, I know me and my mom and dad was there for 18 years. And then I got 3 wonderful kids, my wife. I got a 17, 15, and getting ready to be a 13-year-old couple next month. But, I'm nervous. This is not me. When they asked me to do a testimony, like they're asking you guys to do, I'd always hit the back door as quick as I could. You know, I would. I mean, I'd hurry up and hit the back door when they go around asking. Their preacher would ask if anybody wanted to do a testimony. And then when they started, they'd start, and then they'd just keep going to the next person. I'd hit that back door quick as I could, or down the steps. But you know why? Because now I know. Because, let's see, 5 years ago, my dad we was in church, all of us was, and we lost him. He died of lung cancer. And when he died, I died with him, I thought. And you know how you'll shine away and not want to be around nobody. That's the way I've done my wife. I mean, it was hard for both of us. Well, I was starting to get better. A year and a half later, my mother-in-law died, my wife's mom, and they were real close. And that put us both in pushed us back. Well, the Lord worked with us. Like I said, my dad had died 5 years earlier, or 3 years then. And when he died, I died. I didn't really care. And one Sunday morning, the Lord spoke to me and said, "It's time to leave." And I looked at her and I told her, I said, "Babe, this will be my last Sunday here." I said, "We're just going to have to do something." And, well, the next day, my mom called my wife and told her she needed to talk to her. My wife went up there and my wife went and talked to my mom, and my mom said, "It's time to leave." And we started going to the Methodist church. And the first Sunday at church, my mom sits on the second row of the front at a brand new church. And I sat with her because we're new. I didn't want to go to the back. And the whole time in that service, the preacher kept looking at me the whole time. And he asked me after church, he said, Craig Greengood, he said, "How'd you like it?" I said, "I liked it because you kept watching me. I couldn't go to sleep." I said, "But that's what it was, And one of the hardest things I had to do to tell my mom, and this was hard to me to tell my mom this, was I was a hypocrite. I'd go to church every Sunday, but I would act different once I got back out in the real world. And that's something I learned. And then I went on out of Maya, and that changed my life. The Maya flock did up the other temple and changed their marriage. But now I'm getting to work them, and it's got a lot better. I had something else to say, but I'm about done here. Let's see. But, you know, Tim was saying, yeah, I know what I was going to say. You said, well, like a testimony. You know, a testimony is something God's done for you or blessed you. Back then, when I'd always run out the back door, I didn't have nothing to be thankful for. And now, this is the first time I've done this. I know I'm probably going out there, but now I'm thankful for everything because he's changed my life and helped me be able to do this. But I believe I'm done, Tim. Very much.
If you are glad Boone shared, then you can thank Malana. Because did you enjoy the invitation to come here today? It's church. You can't be lying now.
You're in a church.
I called him and I thought the Lord put him on my heart to do this. So I called and asked him if he would come and share his testimony. And his answer was very quick, no. I don't think so. Bye. He hung up, said, bye, I gotta go. Bye. I'll pray about it, yeah. You know what I'll pray about it means? I'll pray about it means no. So that's just for anybody. So I get a call back about 2 minutes later. What do you want me to do again? So no matter how much, he's like a diesel though, once you get him started, you know. But no matter how much you may not want to do it at times, I think he's proved that it doesn't matter if you want to do it. Michaela came last week. She wasn't looking for it. She gave me the same answer. I said, hey, you want to go share your testimony? She said, no. Mm-mm. But then she ended up a few days before that, she said, you know, I was thinking about that. Yeah, come on. But it's not something everybody looks forward to and wants to do and is comfortable doing. But if we only do what we're comfortable doing, how do we ever grow? How does anybody else ever grow? Well, I've used the analogy with a few of you guys just one-on-one talking about different stuff. I went to a personal trainer a year and a half ago or so, about a little over a year ago. I got a gym membership because I was going to lose weight. I lost about 20 pounds and then went to the Chinese buffet. It was over with. But for those 20 pounds, I went to a gym, and you get the membership, you get to meet with a personal trainer before you start. And he said, brought me over to the machine. He said, all right, All right, get on that and do 15 minutes on there and then come see me. All right. So I get going. I'm sure it's been 15 minutes and I'm just standing in a pool of sweat and I'm about to die. My heart's going to explode. And he says, you know, you can take a break. And I'm like, I got to be about done. And I look down, it's like 3 minutes into it, not 3 minutes left. That man pushed me hard that night, but he taught me how to exercise, and now I did the same exercise today at my mother-in-law's house. But it was, he pushed me out of my comfort zone because I was never going to lose weight doing the exercise I was already doing, right? Nothing's ever going to change if we do what we were already doing. It's only when we're willing to be uncomfortable and move out of our comfort zone that we can ever experience change. Well, I'll ask for the second of 3 times tonight. Anybody want to share anything tonight? Anybody think of something they'd like to share? Maybe a testimony from this week or this month, this year? Breathing good. Hallelujah. That's a testimony.
I share another real quick one, Brother Ted, from this scripture. You know, Tuesday, the devil was fighting me to not go last night to the meeting. We have a reunion meeting after the Emmaus walk, just to get together and tell everybody how your week went, or just listen to how everybody's week went. And I was going home, I was thinking, wow, you know, I gotta be up so early, and I do get up early, 3 o'clock in the morning. What time I get up? And I'm like, you know, it's just gonna be so late. I know it's gonna be 9 or 10 o'clock before I get home, and I'll just be so tired.
It was 11, wasn't it?
Yeah, about 10:30 when I got home. So I'm thinking of all these excuses to not go.
Valid excuses.
Oh yeah, real valid excuses. And I looked down in the cuff of my shirt, folded over a little bit, you know, where it'd been sitting wrong in the closet. And I said, well, I can't wear that tonight. That won't look very good. Okay, God, I understand. I'm going. And I went, and he really blessed me. So.
That's what it was. I done the same thing. I get 2:30, 3 every morning to be at work at 3:30. You know, I know how you feel. I was trying to figure out how to get out of this today.
And that's why I told you don't even worry about deciding if you were going until Tuesday night, because I knew you had a bunch of reasons not to go. Anybody else want to share? Anything? This is Malana. She's married.
My name's Malana. I'm not nearly as tall as him either. I'm just 5'4", 5'3.5". Okay. God is so good. He's making me stand up. But I don't even know where to even start. But I want to clarify a few things that he forgot to mention in all of this. In the midst of his dad dying, he's an only child. That's the reason why they were so close. In the midst of my mom dying, I'm an only child. That's the reason why we was so close. When we was going through all of this, of his dad dying, my mom died, we were over the youth. We had been over the youth for 8 or 10 years. We were pouring our hearts and souls into these youth. And we were getting our hearts broke constant. When he had told me he didn't want to come back and he wasn't going no more, I didn't say anything. I kept it to myself. You know how, as women, we put a face on, nothing's wrong. Put a smile on your face, nothing's wrong. I did. And I acted like nothing was wrong with me, and I kept on going. When his mom had called, I started bawling when I got over there because I knew it was God, because he knew that we wouldn't leave without his mom. Well, not only we left about 20 kids that we had been over them for 8 or 10 years. To us, that was heart-wrenching because we've got 3 of our own. I mean, Michaela's been over our house, spent the night. We've loved on her. We was used to all these kids coming over, being over to our house. So that was very hard on us. But our God brought us through it. And when we went on the MAS, he went, then I went. We had never, ever cheated on each other. We had never, done the bad stuff in our marriage. We were just separated apart. It totally brought us back together to what a marriage is supposed to be. Granted, we're not perfect. I don't think anybody is perfect. I make my mistakes every day. He works at Parker Steele's. I work up at Allen's lunchroom. I'm a cook in the lunchroom. Matter of fact, I see Michaela every day. She comes through and sees me. I get to see those kids. I love those kids. My heart's with kids. Now, you're not supposed, they say you're not supposed to bring religion into schools, but that don't mean when a kid comes through my lunch line, I'm not going to grab them up when they're crying and say, love you, and show them a little bit of God's love. I can't not do that because that's what God does for me. And I have been told before not to hug on a kid because I have grabbed them and hugged them and because they are kids that are abused. And I saw it so much last year, it literally broke my heart. I came home crying one night, wanting to go to DCS with him to go adopt 5 kids. And he was telling me, honey, you're crazy. We got 3 of our own. You're a lunatic. But I love them. But what my God does for me, my testimony, is no matter what you've been through, because I've been through a lot in my life. I grew up with my mom and dad divorced. My stepdad beating my mom every day, cussing all the time, drugs around me. I was brought up in that. I know what it's like. I said my children would never be around that stuff, and they never have. Granted, when they turn 18, I can't help it, but mom and dad's still going to have their say-so in it, but I can't help it. But even if you get caught in a point where you think you can't come out, you can dig your way back out. All the time we put God in a little box, kind of like a Pepsi, and we put a cap on it. You can't see it when it comes open, but there's air and stuff coming out of that. That's our God. He's all around. He's not just capped up in a little container. He's there with us all the time. So, anyways, that's my testimony. So, I hope it made sense.
We've had, let's see, 2 this week, 3, so 5 plus the 2 the first week, 7, plus a couple of y'all have shared 9. So now we've had 9 examples of testimony. And we've got a couple more next week. Jim and Heather Fournette, some of y'all know now. You met Jim, and y'all know him easily. We'll be here next week, and maybe the people that were supposed to be here tonight will be here. They may have got the week mixed up. But we've heard 9 examples of people sharing their testimonies. Does everybody give theirs perfectly? Did they share like Billy Graham would? No, they shared like we would. And that's kind of the point, is that we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be a public speaker. We don't have to be comfortable doing it. We just share from our heart what God's doing and how He's moving and working. And I can see so many different reasons why you might want to share some of those things that y'all shared in break room at Parker Seal, standing out next to the food truck getting your burger lunch. I used to have the food truck down the street from the restaurant, from the factory, or sitting around the lunchroom working. You know, that's I've been in that environment. You're a tight group of people. You know when somebody's hurting and what's going on in their life. You know, and you have things that you can share with them that can interject God into the situation. Because a lot of times we see people hurting, and it's because they're fighting with their ex, or they're fighting with their parents, or they're fighting with their sibling. But it's all about the two sides and who's right and who's wrong and who did what to who, and there's no thought of how God's working in the midst of that and how He can or could. So we can share that, and we can interject God. We can inject God into the situation, like a marinade in a good steak. Does anybody else want to share tonight? I'll ask for my last time. I see the wheels turning, so I just wondered.
Oh, I didn't mean I was going to talk.
I know the look.
I was just thinking last night, it stirred in me, you know, he says if He be lifted up, He draws all men unto us. And he was talking about apathy earlier, and I thought, if we could just get it through our heads that, you know, we want to draw the youth in, we want to draw people in to get these little churches filled up and to get them loved on and stuff. But if we don't learn to lift up Christ together, then He's not going to draw the people to us. Because we can't draw the people. There's nothing we can do in these little congregations. You know, you guys can just stay in the same shape you're in, and there's nothing ever going to change if Jesus isn't lifted up in the midst of our congregations. And so I'm kind of thankful to hear, you know, that he's teaching on testimonies and stuff, because I think that's a lost art. I think we really have forgotten how to lift up the name of Jesus and what He's done in His nature and His character in our lives. You know, we all have some amazing stories. I can't wait to hear some of y'all's stories of what God's brought you through, because it draws me closer to Christ just to hear, especially the older generation. I mean, y'all been through some stuff, and us younger folks over here need to hear it, you know, so that we can be wooed into the Father, because there's stuff you guys have been brought through that I've not had to go through. You know, and if you guys, once you guys open your mouth, God will fill it, and you'll just begin to share all the victories that you've had. And that brings us young people encouragement not to give up, because there's a younger generation than us that is going to be totally lost to Jesus. They're going to be totally lost if we don't begin drawing them in by lifting Him up. But that was what was on my heart.
I thought you was going to share a testimony. I didn't know you was going to preach.
Sorry, my bad.
Oh, you're fine. Anybody has that opportunity. Not just me. That's the purpose of Wednesday night, is we all come together and share what's going on. But I thought it was a really good point about especially the older generation, because there are things that some of y'all have lived through that I got no idea about. I remember I used to listen to my great-grandmother's stories of they got married in 21. So they had a farm and 2 kids when the Depression hit. What? If not for her stories, I wouldn't know what that's like. I wouldn't have a clue, because I haven't lived through a situation like that. And as much as people want to talk like it is, the recessions that we've experienced in the 80s and then in 2008, nothing compared to that. Nothing compared to that. Now we have government programs in place so that nobody hits rock bottom. They were created because of that. And you had people dying of hunger. You had all kinds of amazing. I never realized she used to tell about unplugging the clock at 7 o'clock at night and plugging it back up at 7 o'clock the next morning to save electricity. Y'all would never even thought of something like that. What do they save, a nickel a year? You know, but a nickel's important, especially when you're working on a farm, because you're creating everything you need and you have a very small amount of money to go buy things. So when I hear the price of something like a pair of shoes was $2, I think, well, if you're working all week, $2 not that. But no, you're not working all week. You're working and creating your food, and what little you sell, $2 was a lot. You know, so without some of the older stories, without some, you know, people that lived through the 60s, the 70s, I didn't. So I don't know those things. And I don't know, the only thing I know about them is what people share. So I don't know what heartaches and stuff I might face if I don't listen to people that have already walked the road I've walked. It's one reason why I love listening to old married couples. You know, because they can tell me so much more than I know about marriage. I know in theory. They know in reality. They know in practice. Well, for some reason I felt like I needed to be prepared to share a testimony tonight because, and then 2 people didn't show up, so I'm going to share something because it was from today. Tabitha already seen it because I put it on Facebook and made sure she's seen it because I wanted to share it with her. But let's see. How to make that short. I'm not good at short, am I? No. So now I've got to practice being short, and I'm telling everybody to be short. When I was running crazy in my earlier life, y'all heard a lot about that. I was wild. I was doing everything you could imagine, drugs and alcohol and criminal activities, whatever you can think of. And I felt like I was kind of stuck in that way. I didn't like my life. I didn't like it at all. But I really didn't feel like anything could be different. It was just kind of the way it was, and I just kind of went on with it. But there was a song that I remember sticking in my head back then that... I don't have any tissue, I'm probably done. But I remember this song sticking in my head. And y'all ever heard John Denver, Rocky Mountain High? Everybody's heard that song, right? He was born in the summer of his 27th year, coming home to a place he'd never been before. That lyric stuck in my head. And it spoke to me about something that, it was like, I wasn't 27 yet, see? And this guy was born in the summer of his 20th. How can you be born in the summer of your 27th year? Well, what I took that to mean in my life at that time is there was the possibility that there was something coming, yet to come in my life, that something could all change just in a matter of a day, just right in 1 second, and I could find myself completely different in life, and I could find myself on my way home, even though I'd never been to the place before. And I always liked that song, I always liked that idea, but it just sort of hung out there for a while. And then in the summer of my 27th year, my great-grandmother passed away. It was in the last weekend in May. And I went home, but it was to a place I'd been before. I went down to West Tennessee for the funeral. And through the events that transpired there, and there's about 6 testimonies that took place there I can share with you, but through what went on there, when I came back, I went and found the church. I went out the very next Sunday and I got my car and I drove around and looked at the signs of what time they started and looked for the one that was going to start right now so I didn't have to wait and I didn't have to stand around and talk to people before. And that was my church from then on. It was Richland Creek Baptist Church in Nashville on Robertson Avenue. And I started going to that church. And that was when everything in my life started to change. And I looked back years later, and I didn't think about it till years later, but I looked back and I seen that song. And this morning I was thinking of some stuff, and I had that song, Softly and Tenderly, Jesus is Calling, Oh Sinner, Come Home, you know that song? It's a great old hymn. And I had that and I was thinking about come home, and we need to, sometimes it's just time to come home. And that's John Denver's song popped into my mind. I thought, now what was the lyrics to that? So I pulled it up on YouTube and let it play, and I just sat there weeping this morning for 10 minutes listening to it, because what it reminded me of is while I was out there as lost as can be, and I didn't care a thing about God, and I didn't want to hear from God, and I wasn't reading the Scriptures, and I wasn't searching through the Scriptures, so God couldn't talk to me through the Scriptures, so He took some hippie that had some song on the radio and talked to me through it, and spoke to me through it, and was telling me that I had reason to have hope, because He knows the end from the beginning. He knew what was going to happen. The song says, he was born in the summer of his 27th year, coming home to a place I'd never been before. He left yesterday behind him. You might say he was born again. You might say he found a key to every door. And that was my story at the summer of my 27th year. And it just gave me hope to know that I can share that with somebody. If they're praying for a son or a daughter or a cousin or something, and they're lost and they're in the world and they're not doing what they're supposed to be, and it just seems hopeless, I can say, but hold on. all it takes, God, is one day. One day, and it don't matter if you're 27, 37, 87. All it takes is just that one moment. And He can have them born again. He can reach out and touch them and just turn their whole world around. And the reason I know that He can is not because I'm a preacher, not because I've studied theology, and not because I can quote you the Bible, but because He did it in my life. And if He'll do it in my life, He'll do it in your life, and He'll do it in your cousin's life, and your son's life, and your whoever's life. That's a testimony that I'd share tonight because it fits so perfectly into what we could share for somebody else. I'm surprised as can be, and I made it through that without a tissue. But because that's very emotional for me, and that's harder to share something. That's another reason why we don't share things, because we're scared to cry, because we're men. He's about broke me of that. In January, I felt like I needed to go buy a pack of tissues and or handkerchiefs and keep a handkerchief with me every week when I preach. And from January till June, I was crying in every single sermon. Until June, I just sat down on the altar rail and sat there and talked and cried for 10 minutes for the first part of the sermon, for the Father's Day sermon. And then got up and finished preaching it. And then it finally broke, and I just tear up every now and then. Last call. Any testimonies? Anybody? I seen it earlier, but I wasn't going to call you out.
That's not what you think.
But I saw you had a look on your face like, I know something like this here.
Okay, in July of 2013, last year, me and my husband, he had quit his job in 2012. He had got mad at work and walked out. Well, I was a seasonal employee. I only worked maybe 6 months out of the year. So we were dependent on my little measly weekend check that I was going to get. And we had a mortgage payment, like everybody else, utilities and everything. And everything just started coming to where, we could not pay for nothing. It was hard just to get gas for me to go to work on the weekends. Well, luckily, we both got a job in Crossville working for his cousin at this sorting company where we just looked at parts. We worked there about 2 weeks, and I get a phone call from my mortgage company saying they're foreclosing on my house. And everybody tells me, okay, well, you can call this Save Tennessee Homes and all this other bunch of stuff. Well, I call them. There's nothing they can do. There's a sell date within 2 weeks. And so, they tell me nothing. I'm sorry, but there's nothing. So we went on and on. We finally got the money to pay to catch up the house. Well, I called the mortgage company and I told them, I said, I've got the money here. Well, you have to pay the lawyer fee because it's in foreclosure. So that was another it was like $1,500 that we were going to have to come up with for the lawyer fee. It was a total of like almost $4,000 that we had to have to save our home. And this home is the home I was born and raised in and brought all 3 of my children home to. And so I was thinking, okay, what are we going to do? We can't, there's no way. And so I went to work at this little factory that we were working in, and there was only maybe 22 people that worked there. And there was this lady, her name was Fran, and she was Hispanic. She had this really funny, she was from the Dominican Republic, and she had a different accent, and she came up to me and she said, I was crying, and she said, Tabitha, she said, what's going on? And I told her. I said, we're going to lose our house. They're going to sell it tomorrow at 1 o'clock at the courthouse. And she said, well, it was on a Wednesday. And she said, if you don't care, I'd like to have my church pray for you. She said, just write on a piece of paper, your name and what you would have them pray for. And I said, okay. I didn't have them pray that I would get to keep my home. I just prayed if it would be God's will for us to move, that we would find a place. The next day, she come in, and it was about 8 o'clock. She made her rounds to me, and she said, I just want you to know that my church prayed that they would change the hearts of the people at the bank. And this bank is not a locally owned bank. It was a J.P. Morgan Chase bank out of, California. It wasn't around here. And I said, okay, Fran. I said, I appreciate it. I said, but, they're going to sell it today at 1 o'clock. And I give her a hug and everything. Well, at 10:15, this happened at 8 o'clock. At 10:15, I get a phone call. And I had been told by my boss that I could go outside if I got a call. And I go outside. It's the head guy from the bank. And he tells me that they're not going to foreclose on my house, that they had stopped it, and that I would be receiving paperwork to do a home modification loan so that I could refinance my home and I wouldn't lose it. And I just began to cry because I knew that there was, it was supposed to be sold, what was happening? But they never sold my house, and to this day, I still have my house.
That's a testimony, ain't it?
That's a testimony.
When you know that there ain't no way. That's when you know there ain't no way, but there's a God. Anybody else? Because it's not really about telling our story. It's about telling God's story in our life. That's what the Bible is. It's not the story of man. It's the story of how God has worked with man. And that's what our testimony is. It's not just telling some story from our past, but telling when God worked and moved in our past. When God was there and He showed up and He changed things. He moved things. He changed people. He healed things. He restored things. I could see you sharing that at work or somewhere when somebody's faced with a unmovable opposition, such as a home foreclosure or something. I don't know if you'll get to keep your home or not, but I do want to tell you prayer works. It does. And maybe you're not supposed to, but prayer works. And whatever needs to happen, you get in the same room with God. And it's going to happen.
I didn't even know people that prayed for me. I didn't know the church. I knew this one lady that was it. And she had her whole congregation pray.
Yeah. So, see, that's a testimony of someone who's in despair, feels all alone, has a problem between them and an entity like a bank. And you're saying, yeah, but we let God into this situation. What if we sat and prayed right now? Can I pray with you? And just sit over a lunch table or whatever and pray. And take it back to the people you know and you care about that you know are prayer warriors. Well, let's wrap it up in prayer. And let's think about next week. If there's something you want to share that you can think of that'd be a good testimony, a good example of what we're talking about, a reason to move out of our comfort zone, come in ready. Tell me about it, or tell me that you want to share. Microphone's yours, even if you're going to preach like Stacy. Whatever it might be. This is y'all's class. It's not mine. It's y'all's. Let me pray. Lord, I thank you and I praise you for what you've done in our lives. I thank you for what you've done in Boone and Malana's life and the way that you've knit them closer together through a shared experience in your glory like the Emmaus walk. I thank you for taking them from being pew warmers to being Christians. Lord, I thought they were always Christians. I had no idea because the only difference is inside our hearts. But Lord, you know the hearts of men. You looked in and you've seen their hearts. And you took them from that place of complacency, from that place of religion, to that place of Christ, that place of the presence of God. I thank you and I praise you for that. I thank you for the way that you've moved in Willetta's life and healed her, Lord. I thank you for the way that you've moved in Tabitha's life and helped her to keep that home that I know you wanted her to have. Lord, I thank you for the way you've moved in Will's life, Lord, and breaking off the pride. Lord, I thank you for the things you've done for me. Lord, I thank you for giving us the strength and the courage and the bravery to share that amongst other people. To share that we once wasn't perfect, that we once wasn't as shiny as we want people to believe, but that you came along and that your righteousness is spread abroad in our hearts. Lord, help us to have the strength and the wisdom and the discernment to know when to share and what to share, and to share your glory as we go out from these walls. To take this body of Christ and to go out into the community and to inject Jesus into every situation we come across. Lord, I thank you for that. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.